In the cold silence of space, a giant alien ship floated like a ghost through the stars. The ship, dark and sharp like a knife, was called Vornak. It belonged to the Tharnix Empire, a race feared across galaxies. They were cruel, powerful, and known for using living creatures as tools. Inside the ship, behind thick steel doors and dark hallways, there was a secret chamber. Very few knew about this room, and even fewer dared to speak of it. Inside, a strange blue light glowed softly, pulsing like a heartbeat. That light was not from any machine. It came from a girl. She floated inside a glass tank filled with energy fluid. Her name was Lura, and she was not human. Her skin was silver blue, her hair white like snow, and her eyes were bright like stars. She looked peaceful, but she was not asleep. She was trapped. Her body was connected to thick glowing wires. Her energy, her life, was being drained to power the ship. The Tharnix called her the Core. But once, she had a real name, a real life, and a home. Now, she was just fuel. Outside the chamber, a young human named Jace walked slowly down the hallway. He was new to the ship, a mechanic from Earth, sent here to do small repairs. He didn't ask questions. Humans were low-level workers in the Tharnix army. They gave orders. Humans followed. That was the rule. Jace was curious by nature. He had seen strange things since coming aboard. Doors he wasn't allowed to open. Power readings that didn't make sense. And now, this hallway cold, hidden, and locked. But today, the door was half open. His hands shook as he stepped inside. The blue light filled the room, soft but powerful. And then, he saw her. His breath caught in his throat. She didn't look like a machine or a weapon. She looked like a person, weak, pale, and trapped. Then, her eyes opened, just for a second, and they looked at him. Jay stepped back in shock. He felt something strange in his mind, like a whisper. "Help me," it said. It wasn't a voice. Not in the air, it was in his head. He ran, heart racing, thoughts spinning. Was she real? Was she alive? Or was it just a dream? He couldn't stop thinking about her eyes, about that one silent cry for help. The next day, he returned. This time, he stayed longer. The girl didn't open her eyes, but the energy around her pulsed differently. He reached out and touched the glass. Again, the whisper came. "Please, help me." Over the next few days, Jace came back again and again. He learned her name, Lura. She showed him images in his mind, flashes of green skies, crystal lakes, and tall silver trees. She showed him her family, her world, her capture. Tharnix had destroyed her planet. She was the last of her kind. They found she had special energy inside her, so they put her in the tank and turned her into a battery. Jace felt sick. He couldn't believe it. He was part of this. He worked on a ship powered by a living being, a girl, not a tool, not a weapon, but a person. And worst of all, she was dying every day. Her light dimmed a little more. She was running out of energy, running out of time. Jace didn't know what to do. If he tried to help her, he could be killed. The Tharnix didn't forgive, and they didn't forget. But he couldn't walk away either. Not anymore. One night, Lura showed him something new, a countdown, a hidden file, deep in the ship's computer. It said, "Core efficiency, 3 days remaining. 3 days until she was fully drained. 3 days until she died." Jay stared at the screen, then looked back at her. She looked peaceful again, but he knew the truth. He couldn't let this happen. He made his choice. No more silence, no more fear. He would break the rules. He would risk his life, because no one deserved to die in a cage. Not even an alien girl with stars in her eyes. And as he turned to leave, Lura whispered one last word into his mind. "Thank you, asterisk, for the first time in years." She dreamed, not of stars or galaxies, but of wind touching her skin, of laughter echoing through silver forests, and of sunlight, real sunlight, warming her face. Inside the glass tank, Lura's body remained still. But deep inside her mind, something had changed. She wasn't alone anymore. Jace had seen her, he had heard her, and most importantly, he had believed she was alive. That was enough to give her hope. Elsewhere on the ship, Jace couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face. He saw the wires, the glow, the silent scream. And he heard that voice in his mind, soft but real. He had only 3 days to do the impossible. But before he could save her, he needed to understand her. Who was she? What made her so powerful? And why could he hear her voice when others could not? The next night, he returned to the chamber. This time, he brought tools, not for breaking, but for listening. He placed a small device on the tank, one he had built himself. It wasn't legal tech, but it could read energy patterns. As the device scanned Lura's energy, something strange happened. The room went silent. Jace's ears stopped hearing, but his mind woke up. He saw her again, but not in front of him. He was standing in a forest of glowing trees. The sky above was filled with 2 moons, and birds that flew like light, and then she appeared, walking slowly toward him. No wires, no tank, no pain, just Lura, free and glowing. "This is my world," she said, not with words, but with thought. Jace looked around, amazed. "It's beautiful," he replied. Lura smiled, but her eyes were sad. "It was," she whispered, and then the world changed. The trees burned, the skies turned black, and the ground shook with fire. Giant ships fell from the sky, Tharnak's war machines. Her people ran, but there was nowhere to hide. Jace watched in horror as the memory played. He saw the moment they took her, the moment she screamed, and the light exploded from her body. The Tharnak saw her power, and they called her a miracle. But to Lura, it was a curse. The vision faded, and Jace fell backward, gasping. He was back in the chamber, his hands shaking. Lura's eyes were closed, but her energy pulsed gently. She was still connected to him, somehow. Their minds had formed a bond. Over the next 2 days, Jace returned again and again. Each time their connection grew stronger. He could now sense her emotions, fear, pain, hope, and sometimes when no one was around, she would whisper thoughts into his mind. They talked without speaking. They shared without touch. They built trust silent, but strong. One night, Lura showed him something new, a memory not of her world, but of the Tharnak ship. She had seen things while trapped in the tank, plans, maps, secrets. The ship was not just any warship, it was the central hub of an energy network. Her power was being sent to other ships, other worlds. Jace realized the truth. If she died, the Tharnaks would replace her with another child, another soul. Turned into a battery, this wasn't about saving one life. It was about stopping a system built on pain. He couldn't do it alone, but who could he trust? Most of the humans aboard were just workers like him, too scared to fight, and the few who had power. They followed orders without question. Then, Lura showed him one more thing. A control panel deep inside the ship's core. If Jace could reach it, he could unlock her tank, but there was a catch. The control panel was guarded day and night by Tharnak soldiers. It was a suicide mission, and he only had 1 day left. As Jace walked back to his room, he passed other humans laughing. Tired, unaware, he wondered how many of them knew, how many had seen the blue light and turned away, how many had stayed silent to protect their own lives. But Jace couldn't stay silent, not anymore. Lura had shared her soul with him. Now he would share her pain, and maybe, just maybe, her freedom too. It started with a spark, not in the wires, not in the ship, but inside a human heart. A mechanic with no rank, no weapon, and no army. But with a reason, Jace had made up his mind. He would break the chains, even if it killed him. The corridors of the ship were colder that night. Every step echoed louder than usual. Every passing guard seemed more alert. Or maybe it was just his fear crawling up his spine. He had 24 hours left. Lura's life was a candle almost out. If he waited, she would fade, and her light would be gone forever. But if he acted, he might bring war to the ship. He might wake the monster. He sat alone in the supply room, surrounded by parts and wires. His hands moved fast. building a device he had never tested before. It looked like a small box, but inside it held a code breaker, a power surge trigger, and a silent alarm blocker. He called it the key. It wouldn't open every door, but it might just open the one that mattered most. Laura whispered into his mind again. She was growing weaker, her thoughts slower, but her voice still reached him. Soft like wind. You don't have to do this. She said, I do, he answered aloud, even though no one was there. He hid the key inside his uniform and walked toward the lower deck. He passed the energy center, the weapon bay, the cargo zone. He had memorized every step, every camera blind spot, every shift change. But when he reached the stairwell, he stopped. 2 Tharnix guards stood in front of the core access door. Tall, armored, and sharp-eyed. No human was allowed past that point. Not without special clearance. Jace took a deep breath and walked up with fake confidence. He held out a forged repair report. Maintenance order from level 6, he said calmly. The guards stared at him for a long moment. Too long, then one of them growled, there is no report. Jace's hand moved before he could think. He slammed a flash bomb onto the wall. Blinding light filled the corridor. The guards roared and stumbled. Jace didn't wait. He ran through the door as it slid open behind them. Inside, red lights glowed across the room. Pipes hissed, machines hummed, and at the center of it all was the control panel. The one Laura had shown him in the vision. He rushed forward and pulled out the key. It clicked into the system. Lights blinked. Code scrolled across the screen. It was working, but then alarms. He had tripped something. Footsteps pounded behind him. The guards were coming. Jace worked faster, sweat running down his face. He saw her name flash across the screen. Core. Lura 12% life or Remainine. She screamed in frustration. Come on, come on. The screen turned green. Release lock Ionite AT back in the chamber. The glass tank began to crack. Blue light leaked from the sides. Lura's eyes opened slowly, confused and afraid. She felt the chains weaken. She felt something she hadn't felt in years. Freedom. Jace turned to run, but it was too late. One of the guards tackled him to the ground. The second raised a weapon to strike. Jace thought this was the end. But then, the lights flickered, the ground shook, a burst of blue energy exploded from the upper deck. Lura had woken. The tank shattered completely. The wires fell like dead snakes to the floor. Her body dropped, weak and shaking, but alive. She whispered one word into the ship's system. Stop. And the ship obeyed. Every machine paused. Every light dimmed. The guards froze mid-movement. Even the air went still. Jace looked up. He felt the silence like a blanket, and then he heard her, stronger now. I'm free. He smiled through bloody lips and whispered, we did it. But Lura replied with a warning. No, not yet. The ship's systems rebooted in red. An override began. The Tharnix had noticed the failure, and they were coming. Jace stood up slowly, pain in every bone. He had broken the chains, but now he had started a war, and there was no turning back. Asterisk freedom came with silence. Not celebration, not joy, just silence, the kind that feels heavy, like the calm before a storm. Lura stood barefoot on the cold metal floor. Her body shook with weakness, but her eyes were clear. For the first time in years, she was breathing real air, not through tubes, not through wires. She was alive. And she was awake. Jace limped beside her, his shirt torn, his face bruised. He looked at her like someone seeing the sun after living in darkness. You're out, he whispered, almost not believing it himself. Lura nodded slowly, but inside, she felt something worse than the tank, something she had forgotten. Pain, not just in her body, but in her soul. She had been sleeping for years. Now the memories had returned all at once, and the pain came with them. They didn't have time to feel it. The sirens began. Red lights flashed across the walls. Tharnix guards were moving fast. Jace grabbed her arm gently. We need to go. They ran one step at a time, not like heroes, but like survivors. They didn't know the way, only that they had to go down. Away from the command deck, away from the heart of the ship. Every hallway looked the same, cold, metal, endless. They passed workers, humans frozen in shock. Some moved to help. Others looked away. Pretending they saw nothing, Lura stumbled, her strength fading fast. Each breath was harder than the last. Jace didn't hesitate. He picked her up. She was light, like carrying fire wrapped in skin. As he ran, she whispered in his mind, "I can't hold it much longer." "Hold what?" he asked. "The spark," she replied. "My power, it's burning out." They reached the lower hangar, a place Jace had only seen on blueprints. Inside, rows of escape pods sat locked and waiting. Most of them were reserved for Tharnik's officers. But Jace had hacked the system days ago, just in case. He slid Lura into the pod gently. She looked up at him with tired eyes. "You need to leave too," she said. "I'm not going without you," he replied. He climbed in beside her and slammed the door shut. The pod shook as it disconnected from the ship. Behind them, explosions began to echo, small ones at first. The ship was reacting to Lura's escape. Like a wound trying to heal, systems were collapsing, energy lines overloading. She was no longer the core. Now she was the threat as the pod sped into space. Jace held her hand. Her skin was cold, and the glow around her was fading. "Lura, stay with me," he said. Panic in his voice. Her voice entered his mind one last time, soft and fading. "You gave me freedom," she said. "But the spark is almost gone." "No," Jace whispered. "You can't stop now." But her eyes were closing, not from sleep, but from surrender. Suddenly, the pod's screen blinked red. A Tharnik's warship was following them. It was massive, 3 times the size of the one they escaped from, and it was charging weapons. Jace's hands flew over the controls. But the pod was slow, unarmed, and already damaged. He looked at Lura. She was too weak to speak, but he felt her thoughts. Not fear, not anger, just sadness. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I wanted more time." Jace gritted his teeth. "No," he said, "we don't give up." The warship fired. A beam of light sliced through the black sky, headed straight for them. Jace closed his eyes, and then everything went white. But they didn't die. Instead, time stopped. The beam froze in midair. The pod hung in silence, floating between seconds. Lura's body glowed brighter than ever before, brighter than the stars around them. She had given her last spark not to destroy, but to protect. She had frozen time itself. Jace looked at her, tears in his eyes. "Lura," he whispered. She opened her eyes one final time and smiled. Then, the light faded. The pod dropped back into motion. But the warship was gone, disappeared completely. Only empty space remained. Jace sat in silence, holding her hand. No more alarms, no more running, just silence. But not the heavy kind. This silence felt peaceful. And somewhere deep in the systems of the pod, a small flicker of blue remained, the last spark still alive. The escape pod fell like a dying star, silent, broken, glowing only faintly. It crashed into the ground of an old forgotten planet, one that hadn't seen light in centuries. Dust flew into the dark sky, rocks shook, and machines buried deep in the earth stirred for the first time in 1,000 years. Inside the wrecked pod, Jace woke up with a sharp gasp. His ribs ached, his head spun. But he didn't care. His eyes searched for her. Lura. She lay beside him, still and quiet. The glow that once danced on her skin was gone. Her breath was weak, her body cold. But her heart was still beating barely. Jace wrapped her in a heat blanket and stepped outside. The world around them was dark, gray, silent. The sky was filled with black clouds and strange stars. The ground was dry and cracked, as if the planet had once burned and never recovered. But Jace noticed something strange. The wreckage of ships, metal towers half buried in sand, ancient structures with alien writing on them. This wasn't just a dead planet. It was a battlefield, or maybe a graveyard. He dragged the blanket with Lura into the ruins. He found shelter in an old bunker built by someone or something, not human. Inside, The walls hummed with low energy. Strange lights flickered to life as if sensing her presence. Laid her down on a soft metal bed and looked around. There were screens, consoles, glowing symbols he couldn't read. Everything was covered in dust, until now, when Lura was brought in. The machines responded. One by one, they activated. The lights grew brighter, the air became warmer, and then on a nearby screen, a language appeared, slowly changing to English. Starburn detected energy signature, match system reactivation in progress. Jace stared at the words. He didn't understand what Starburn meant, but he knew it was about her. The floor beneath him trembled, gears turned, ancient. Metal groaned. The bunker was waking up because of Lura. She wasn't just an energy source, she was a key. Jace turned to her and gently held her hand. "Come on," he whispered. "I know you're still in there." The machines responded to her body, scanning her, and an I voice filled the room. Smooth and calm. Vital signs low energy level, critical external recharge required. Jace looked around desperately. There had to be something here that could help. Then a wall opened slowly, revealing a chamber filled with glowing crystals, blue, gold, green. Each one pulsed like a heartbeat. The I spoke again. Ancient core fragments compatible with Starburn physiology. Jace didn't wait. He grabbed one of the crystals and placed it on Lura's chest. Nothing happened at first. Then the crystal dissolved into light and flowed into her. Her body lifted slightly. Her skin shimmered once more, and her eyes fluttered open. "Jace," she whispered. He smiled with relief. "You're back," he said, choking on emotion. She looked around, confused. "Where are we?" "I don't know," he said, "but I think this place knows you." She sat up slowly, her strength returning little by little. Her fingers touched the walls, and the symbols glowed under her touch. "This planet. It was once a sanctuary," she said. "My people used it long ago, before the war." As she moved, the ground outside trembled again. Something big was waking up beneath them. Not just machines' defense systems, but far above, in the dark sky, danger was returning. A Tharnix drone had tracked their pod's energy trail, and it had already sent a signal to the nearest warship. Jace and Lura didn't know yet, but time was running out. Lura touched the main console. A 3D map appeared, showing the planet and its hidden weapons. Turrets, shields, energy towers, all offline, but ready to be reawakened. "I can bring this place back," she said, "but it will take everything I have." Jay stepped forward. "Then let me help." She looked at him, then at the console. Her hand moved over the panel. Blue light filled the room, and the planet began to breathe. Again, the machine spoke in an old language, but the message was clear. Asterisk beneath the surface of the dead planet. Something ancient stirred, not bones, not beasts, but machines. Massive engines, deep underground, groaned like sleeping giants. For the first time in 1,000 years, they remembered their purpose: to protect, to fight, to rise again, above. The ground, dust danced in the air as towers lit up. Energy lines sparked to life, glowing blue across the surface like veins. The ruins were no longer silent. They were waking up. At the heart of it all stood Lura, her eyes glowing brighter with each passing second. Her hands rested on the control pillar as ancient tech responded to her presence. Jace stood beside her, watching in awe as the dead city came alive. "What is this place?" he asked, his voice full of wonder. Lura didn't answer at first. She was listening, not with her ears, but with her mind, to the voices of the past, to the energy of her ancestors, to the forgotten machines that still remembered her bloodline. Then she spoke. "This was the last fortress of my people," she said slowly. "Built to defend against the Tharnix, but it was never used. Why?" Jace asked. "Because we surrendered," she said. "We gave up hope before the war even reached here." She looked up at the glowing towers. "But now it has a second chance." Suddenly, the I voice echoed through the city. Tharnix signal detected enemy fleet approaching, estimated arrival 2 hours. Jace felt his stomach twist. They found us, he said. Lura nodded. Then we prepare. Over. The next hour, the planet transformed. Automated turrets rose from the sand. Energy shields unfolded like petals of metal. Drone ships powered by crystal cores flew into the sky. Waiting, Jace and Lura worked side by side, activating control systems, reading battle maps, linking tech with thought. Lura could connect directly with the machines, but Jace understood how to fix them, how to make them stronger. They were a perfect team, not just a girl and a mechanic, but a bond of two minds, two species, with one goal: freedom. As they worked, a message came through, a signal from space. Sent by other humans. Jace played it aloud. A shaky voice said, "We saw the energy surge. What's going on down there? Is it true? The core escaped?" Lura stepped forward. "This is Lura of the Starburn," she said clearly. "I am not your core. I am not your battery. I am a living being." Jace added, "We're building a defense. If you want freedom, come now." There was a pause. Then a second voice replied, "We're coming," across the stars. Small human ships turned toward the planet, not as slaves but as rebels. The rise had begun. Back on the planet, the first Tharnik ship appeared in the sky, sleek, deadly, shining. Like a knife, the city's weapons locked on. Lura raised her hand, and the ground rumbled. "This is not just about us," she said. "It's for all the voices that were never heard." Jace looked at her. "And now it's time they listen." The sky lit up with fire. Lasers streaked across the horizon. The city's drones swarmed upward, meeting the enemy in a dance of light and sound. Jace ran to a turret station and began firing. The recoil shook his body, but he didn't stop. This was no longer about survival. It was a message. The Tharniks tried to break through, but the shields held. The machines fought like beasts long forgotten, and in the middle of it all, Lura stood tall, not a prisoner, not a source, but a leader. She reached deep into the planet's core. Her energy merged with the system, and the ground split open, revealing a massive cannon buried for centuries. She looked at Jace and whispered, "This is the heart of the world. Can you control it?" He asked. "No," she said, "but I can become it." Jace's eyes widened. "That'll kill you," she smiled softly. "Only if it's the end." She stepped into the energy chamber. Her body glowed until it was nothing but light. The cannon roared, and a beam of power shot into the sky. It tore through the lead Tharnik ship like paper. Silence followed. Then the enemy fleet began to retreat. But it wasn't over yet. Jace stood alone in the control room. Her voice echoed one last time. "This is only the beginning." It began as a whisper across the stars, a name spoken in fear by the Tharniks, a story told in hushed voices by humans on broken ships, a memory carried by rebels hiding in shadows. The core had escaped, and the humans had turned the tables. The old planet, once a graveyard, was now a symbol, a place where machines rose, where a spark became a storm, where a girl made of light stood against an empire. Jace stood at the top of the ruined tower. The wind howled across the battlefield below, burned ships, shattered drones, cracked metal scars of the war they survived. But Lura was gone. Her voice had faded. Her light had become part of the world she awakened. Still, Jace could feel her. In the machines that hummed softly, in the energy running through the city, in the silence that followed victory. He had no time to mourn, because something had changed in him. The human who once fixed pipes and followed orders was gone. In his place stood a leader. Across the galaxy, the news spread. The Tharniks were not invincible. Their weapon had rebelled. And a human had stood beside her. From forgotten colonies, humans rose. From mines and factories, they broke their chains. They sent messages to Jace. "Tell us what to do. Show us how to fight. We're ready." Jace gathered them. Not as soldiers, but as believers. He used the tech Lura awakened. He shared her story, not just what she did, but who she was. Not a power source, not an object, a soul. And that story became fire. A fire that burned across the stars. The rebellion. grew faster than the Tharnics could crush it. Each time they tried, humans struck back harder. Ships once used to carry cargo became war cruisers, drones were reprogrammed, weapons rebuilt. Jace led the charge. Not with fear, but with memory. He wore a small glowing shard around his neck. The last spark of Lura, a piece of her that never faded, and when he touched it, he heard her voice, faint but steady. "I'm still here," 1 year after the escape. Jace stood on the bridge of the lead rebel ship, facing the Tharnics' homeworld for the first time. A planet of black spires, glowing red skies, and endless war. The Tharnics' commander appeared on the screen, cold eyes, metal skin, voice like glass breaking. "You cannot win," he said. "You are outnumbered, outgunned, outmatched." Jace stepped forward calmly. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He simply said, "We were outnumbered the day you took her, and you still lost." And then he fired, not one gun but all. The rebel fleet moved as one. A storm of human rage and alien power mixed into a single strike. The sky above the Tharnics' world turned white, and when it cleared, their empire was no more. The war ended not with a scream, but with silence. The same silence Lura once gave her life to create. Months later, Earth built a monument, not of stone or metal, but of light. At the center stood a statue of a girl, eyes to the sky, arms open. And next to her, a human, holding her hand. Children gathered at its base and listened to the story. Old workers whispered it like prayer. And the stars above seemed just a little brighter. Jace returned to the planet where it all began, now green. Again, with trees growing from cracked soil, he walked alone, not searching, not grieving, just remembering. He sat under the same tower where she first opened her eyes, and held the glowing shard against his chest. "Thank you," he whispered. The wind moved gently, and though she was gone, her spark remained in every free voice, in every rebel fire, in every corner of the galaxy where light pushed away the dark, because in the end, they didn't just free one girl, they woke a galaxy and gave it back its soul.